Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my ridiculous neighbor thought I was dead after I fell into a coma and decided he can now take over my property and build a house on my land. Before we dive in, please check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms, and you will get early access to new stories and exclusive content. Years ago, I purchased a nice plot of land that would have room for my house as well as a ton of extra space. I cannot really explain it, but I wanted to both live near a bunch of people, but also have my own space without it being just houses right next to each other. I can say one thing at least, and that is my dog was happy to have all the room she wanted to run around and play. I would not really say at that time that there was a downside to where I lived, but I later learned that it would be my neighbor. I never had any bad interactions with him exactly, but it was easy to tell the kind of person that he was. Just an overall sleazy person that I knew I wouldn't want to be friends with. Still, as his neighbor, I tried to be friendly when I saw him. I just had a really bad gut feeling about this guy, but did not want to go around asking and being that person. Instead, I just tried to ignore the feeling and stick to my own life the best that I could. About 2 years into living on that property, I got into an accident when I was on the way home from work. I stopped at a 7-Eleven for a drink and a snack, and when I got out, somebody spat right through the parking lot. I was told I got hit, but I cannot remember that part, which I'm kind of happy about. They told me later that I hit my head really hard against the ground, which is what made the impact even worse. There was a while when the doctors didn't know if I would even survive or what kind of condition my mind would be in when I woke up. I was in a coma for about 2 weeks before I finally woke up and was told what happened to me. I might have been awake, but I was not all there and was still suffering from the injury to my head. It took another couple of months in the hospital before I was okay enough to go home and handle the rest of things as an outpatient. With some heavy restrictions, of course, like no driving or really doing anything aside from resting. My brother was gonna stay with me and help for a while to make things easier. He drove me home, and when we got there, a second house was sitting on my property. My memory might have been a little messed up, but I knew that was not there before I went to the hospital. Our timing was just right because the neighbor walked right out of that house and started back towards his own property. We were able to intercept him and question what he was doing on my property and what that house was. It turned out that he assumed I died in my accident once I was in a coma and figured that he would build a vacation home for his family on my private property. As you can imagine, my brother and I were not happy about this. Brother, do you know how messed up that is? He was in a coma and you just decided to do whatever the hell you wanted. Neighbor, I heard he was in that coma for weeks. I figured he was not gonna wake up and the property shouldn't go to waste. Me, I'm standing right here in front of you. So, are you gonna get rid of the house? Or am I gonna have to make you? Neighbor, it's already built, so you should just accept it. Your property was too big for just you anyway, and who knows what kind of health you will be in after the accident. I could not handle dealing with him, so I told my brother to just come with me into my house and we would deal with it there. I did not have a ton of energy to fight him, so I settled for just calling the cops on him for building this illegal home on my land. I got told by the police that while they would tell him he couldn't trespass on my land, I would probably need to go to court to get him to remove his home from my property. I was still angry and decided that I was going to be a little bit petty and go on a long rant via Facebook about my neighbor, making sure to have it posted in several groups specific to my area with a lot of people that know him. Talking about how I was in a coma only to come back and find that the neighbor tried to steal my property right from under me. I wanted everybody to know that this guy was the worst kind of scum. My neighbor got pissed about my Facebook post and started a lawsuit against me, claiming defamation of character because of what I posted online. I wasn't worried at all about his case because the big thing about defamation being a crime is that it has to be lies. And well, all I did was tell the truth and I cannot get into any legal trouble for that. At that point, I already hired a lawyer to sue him for building on my land illegally. It was really gonna be the two lawsuits going against each other, and I think him trying to sue me back was hurting him more than helping. I found out that he had a bunch of fake documents claiming that he was the true owner of the land and it was not mine. My guess is he got those when I was still in the coma, so if I died he could get an easy claim of the land. I don't really know why he assumed faking those documents would work because it was just a piece of paper at the end of the day. No documents had been filed, no other channels had been went through. He had a paper saying that he owned the land, sure, but he had nothing to back that paper up. He ended up admitting that he assumed I was dead, so he went ahead and started building the home since the property would be up for grabs. A judge had to explain to this fully grown man that even if I died, my property would not magically be up for grabs. If I owed money on it, then it would go to the bank, and if I owed it fully, it would go to the next of kin. The judge also ripped him a new one for trying to bring fake documents as evidence into his courtroom. He was ordered to get rid of the illegal house he built on my property and got some serious fines for the forged documents. Finally, the case against me for defamation had to be dropped because there was zero evidence for it. He could claim defamation of character all day, but the judge looked at what I posted on Facebook and told me that it was well within my rights. I did not lie or deceive anybody about neighbor in order to ruin his opportunities or reputation. He did that with his actions and I was allowed to tell people about it. Since then, I've gotten a lot better, and aside from a few minor side effects, I'm back to my old self. I still love my big property and having a big space between me and my neighbor again. And the next one is a neighbor revenge story. I have lived in my quiet little suburban neighborhood for over 20 years now. I never had any issues with crime or bad neighbors until Gary moved in next door about 6 months ago. From the first day, I could tell this guy was gonna be trouble. He just had an arrogant, entitled air about him. Like he was better than everyone else on the block, basically. The problem started off small at first. I would catch him letting his dog run loose and do his business on my lawn. When I asked him politely to keep his dog leashed, he just shrugged and walked away. Then I started noticing some of my stuff would go missing from my yard and garage. A rake here, the garden hose there, annoying but nothing I could not live with. That is, until last week. I'm a contractor on the side and I had a big job coming up that required my wood chipper. This thing cost me thousands of dollars and was vital for my work. I kept it padlocked in my shed out back. Well, imagine my shock when I went to get it for a job and the shed was empty. That no-good Gary had clipped the lock clean off and swiped my chipper. I was seeing red as I marched over to his house and pounded on the door. When he answered, I could see my chipper sitting right there in his garage behind him. The nerve of this guy. I demanded he return my property immediately. He got right up in my face and said he had no idea what I was talking about. That I had no proof the chipper was mine, and he threatened to call the cops on me if I did not get off his property. Well, I'll admit I lost my cool at that point. Some choice words were exchanged and I probably should have just called the cops right then and there. But no, I had a better idea. I was gonna get revenge. An epic revenge prank that would teach this punk a lesson. Was it smart? No. But hey, nobody steals from me and gets away with it. I retreated back to my house and started planning. First, I gathered up all the dog poop I could find in my yard since Gary never bothered to clean up after his mud. Then I snuck over under cover of darkness and smeared it all over his front door handle and porch. Disgusting? Yeah. Immature? Maybe. But man, it felt good watching him step right in it the next morning. I wish I could say I stopped there, but I was just getting warmed up. Next, I signed up for every spam email list I could find. He must have gotten thousands of emails a day advertising everything from adult videos to hair loss treatment. I even used his email to post ads selling expensive camera equipment for dirt cheap on Craigslist. His phone blew up from interested buyers non-stop. My piece de resistance came when I snuck into his backyard and hooked up a motion-activated sprinkler, right in front of where he parked his precious BMW convertible. You might be thinking, why all these childish pranks if you could have just reported him to the cops right then and there? Well, the truth of the matter was I didn't have video proof of what he did. In my opinion, the best option was to aggravate him enough to do something stupid in front of the cops and thus not even needing video proof. So it finally reached a boiling point one night when I caught him sneaking into my garage. I guess he was coming back for more stuff to steal, but well, this time I got the drop on him. I chased after him and managed to tackle him in my yard, and we scuffled around for a bit until I had him pinned down. When he realized he couldn't get away, he started screaming that I was assaulting him as if I was just gonna let him waltz off my property after I caught him red-handed breaking into my garage again. And then right on cue, the cops showed up with their lights flashing. Gary started telling them some cock and bull story about how I lured him over to attack him out of nowhere. But I showed the officers where my shed lock had been cut and calmly explained the whole situation. How Gary had been harassing me and stealing my property for weeks. The proof was undeniable. The cops cuffed Gary and hauled him away right there on my front lawn. Turns out he had an open warrant for a parole violation too. The look of impotent rage on his face as the squad car pulled away was priceless. After all the havoc he had caused, there was no sweeter revenge than seeing him getting taken off to jail where he belonged. I found out later that Gary got sentenced to several years behind bars for his little crime spree. The judge was not too pleased with his blatant disrespect for the law and us neighbors. Meanwhile, I made sure to file restraining orders to keep him far away once he got out again. So in the end, while I don't recommend going nuts with revenge pranks, the justice system prevailed. Gary's weeks of tormenting us ended with him heading to prison and the neighborhood returning to its peaceful ways. I also learned to keep my anger in check and let the proper authorities handle thieves like him next time. But I tell you, the memory of blasting him with that sprinkler still puts a smile on my face. And the next one is titled Neighbor Thief. So this spring, a young woman, let's call her Kristen, moved into the house next door to me. She owns some sort of catering business for weddings and runs an Instagram account about food. We live in a semi-remote area about 15 minutes outside of a small town. During the pandemic, I got very into gardening and love my thriving vegetable and herb garden. I tend to it very carefully and I love that I can feed my husband and kids with food I have grown. This summer, produce has begun disappearing. Some of my tomatoes, squash, eggplants and herbs will disappear overnight. I see no signs of animals chewing them, no vegetables disappeared from my garden last summer. Obviously, someone is taking them. Christine is the nearest house to mine, the other nearest are a bit of a walk down the road and she is right next door, and I find it very suspicious that they began disappearing right after she moved in. I even checked her Instagram and see her posting photos of food this very week featuring the exact produce that's gone missing from my garden. Tomatoes, zucchini, eggplant, herbs, etc. I confronted her about this yesterday evening and she became very defensive. She said I was crazy and that she had no reason to steal from me as there's a farmer's market right down the road and she grows her own windowsill herbs and has a supplier for her business. She even had the audacity to brag about how much money she makes, saying that her husband brings in good money and that she would have no need to steal. From her defensiveness and this level of bragging, it seems obvious to me that she is lying. Things got ugly and she slammed her door in my face, which to me seems like further proof of guilt. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Should I have gone about this differently? She is clearly stealing from me and clearly lying about it. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here or not? Comment number 1 said, you should have put up cameras and gotten proof that she was stealing from you. You are the a-hole because you started accusing her without any proof. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole. That's a pretty strong relationship destroying accusation without proof, and depending on where you live, that combo of veggies is currently in season and available in great abundance. You don't know what she's growing at the moment. Also, you should put up a camera, don't tell her and apologize. Then let the camera do its work. And the next one is titled Amazing HOA Maliciousness. But with a twist. I'm on my HOA's board of directors. Okay, I'm the president, just shoot me. So our governing documents list any external change that requires an application. Fences, sheds, tree removal, things like that. Oh, and also flowers. Even annuals. The board did not write the governing documents, the builder did, but we are still legally obligated to uphold them, no matter how ridiculous we find them. We can change them, but number 1, it's a big expense, lawyers want money for a reason, and number 2, have to get 66% of homeowners to agree to the change. We cannot even get 25 people to a meeting, and we have 230 plus homes. Needless to say, it ain't happening anytime soon. Did I mention the board thinks it's a stupid rule? Unfortunately, we cannot just ignore the rule if we don't like it. That can lead to homeowners saying things like selective enforcement and neighbor Z planted flowers without permission. I don't need permission to build a full-size bird of prey replica in my backyard. So damned if we do, damned if we don't. Unless, in most HOAs, homeowners can request a variance if the rule creates an undue hardship if a homeowner wants to install something in a setback/easement, etc. The HOA doesn't have to approve it, but the option exists. Cue maniacal cackling. I hatched a plan. An evil plan, that is. I created an online survey where homeowners could request a variance to the application requirement for flowers. Everyone who signed up received a digital waiver request, which was then forwarded to the board. The reasoning for the variance? I believe this restriction is unnecessary and overly burdensome as the exterior of my lot will not change, just the flowers in the flower beds. I agreed to submit applications for all other items in the governing documents. Wanted to include something about the builders being poopy heads, but I saved that for a different day. About 40 homeowners requested the waiver/variance, which the board granted en masse. What do we have here? 20% of homeowners who won't have to follow a rule? Guess that makes the rule unenforceable for everyone. Flowers for you and you and you. And please no hate for being on my HOA's board. I realized that HOAs have bad reputation for being governed by power-hungry, petty and obnoxious Karens, but my board is pretty chill. Just mow your lawn, pay your dues and bring in your trash cans. And yeah, ripe stars, I feel that is also true. Obviously, it doesn't mean that you sign a deal with the devil when you join an HOA necessarily. However, there definitely is a big risk for shenanigans to come up. Either way, the next one is titled Douchebag Neighbors Get What They Deserve. This one neighborhood on the outskirts of the city was a bunch of old but still in good shape tract homes, with the majority of them being homeowner occupied, and had a primarily Hispanic/Latin population. Well, as home prices skyrocketed, this neighborhood became one of the few affordable places to buy a home in the whole county. My friend and her brother had bought their house while the prices were still decent, and I was renting a room there. We are white but love the culture and are not trying to change it. It was the kind of place where on Fridays we would walk down to the neighborhood park where a bunch of taco trucks set up and eat and hang out with the neighbors. Everyone was very welcoming and we got invited to all kinds of cookouts, and the first funeral I'd ever been to that was a huge party with dancing and laughter that truly celebrated the person's life. Still one of my favorite neighborhoods ever. One day we are out front talking to the neighbor across the street who is super nice and friendly. Suddenly, this older white woman quickly waddles up to us and just starts talking. She does not even introduce herself, but I think we all know she is Karen. Karen is talking to the neighbor in that very exaggerated way. That means she does not think he speaks English, so she must speak loudly with big gestures. This is just straight up racist based on his looks, because we were speaking English when she rolled up on us. She tells him, not asks him, but tells him that it is time for him to paint her house. At this point she is doing over-exaggerated Karate Kid, paint the fence gestures and saying, "Paint, you know? Paint the house." We are all stunned into silence with, "What the hell?" Looks on our faces as she keeps going. "That light blue is no good," shakes her finger in his face. "No good, it is bright." Shields her eyes from the house like she was looking into the sun. "Too bright, do you understand?" Now, there is no HOA or city ordinance limiting the colors of the houses in this neighborhood, but none of the houses had any unusual or unique colors. These were tract homes with only about 5 different colors when they were built, and most of them were the original color or something similar. The neighbor's house was still the original color, so this light blue is not unique at all. It's literally one of the most basic colors and is on a lot of homes that were built during that time. Also, the paint on his house was in good condition, not peeling or anything. So my roommate, the neighbor and I all find our voices at about the same time, with my roommate saying, "What the F are you talking about?" I'm like, "Who the F are you?" And the neighbor going off in a tirade of very loud and fast Spanish, but Karen is undaunted in her quest. Realizing my roommate and I speak English, she starts yelling to us about how she just moved in and she is trying to protect her home's value, and it is obviously time for him to paint the house, and she wants the neighborhood to have a certain color palette with more neutral tones instead of this carnival, I'm not sure, thing that was going on now. And yes, she pronounced it like the celebration in Rio, but over-exaggerated, and it was clear she had never been to Carnival or even seen pictures of it, because again, the houses were mostly the same boring colors from when they were built or similar. My roommate and I keep interrupting her and telling her she's being racist. Nobody cares what she wants, the paint looks fine, she has no right to tell him what color he can paint his house, and this neighborhood's culture was established long before she showed up. So if she doesn't like it, she can move, because she shouldn't have moved here in the first place with that attitude. Suddenly, the neighbor waves his hands in front of our faces while saying, "No, no, 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 no," and then pointing to himself, and that is when we realize the neighbor is acting like he doesn't speak English. Since roommate and I know he speaks perfect English, at this point we are just trying to contain our laughter, waiting to see what he's gonna do. Well, he starts talking to Karen in Spanish, the same slow, loud way she was talking to him in English, complete with big gestures and everything. Now, I don't know Spanish very well, but from what I could understand, he is telling her the colors of the houses in the neighborhood and how her house is blue, darker shade, and his house is blue, so what is her problem? Karen clearly does not understand and is getting more and more upset, but when she looks at us for help, we tell her that we don't understand what he is saying either. Karen is fuming and we are trying and failing to contain our laughter. This goes on for just a couple of minutes before the neighbor's 10-year-old son comes out on their porch and loudly asks him if they are gonna go to grandma's for dinner in perfect English. The neighbor then turns to his son and says they are leaving as soon as mom gets back from the store, also in perfect English. He then turns back to Karen and starts speaking to her in Spanish again, and although I don't know exactly what he said to her, there was definitely some swearing and at least one not nice name to call a woman. He then says to us, "See you Friday for dinner," in English and walks away. It takes Karen a few seconds to realize what's going on, then her face turns bright red and she's just sputtering, unable to put together a complete sentence. We just walked away, still laughing. Now here is the malicious compliance part, I think. A couple of weeks later, I am out of town for a couple of days and get back very late at night. As I'm getting my bags out of the car, I realize that it is very bright outside. I know it's a full moon, but something is just not right. I start looking around thinking one of the neighbors must have put in some walkway lighting or maybe even a floodlight over the garage, but that is when I see it. The neighbor across the street had done what Karen wanted and painted his house a beautiful bright orange. And I mean, this thing was practically neon. Under the light of the full moon, the house actually looked like it glowed in the dark, and that is why it was especially bright out in the middle of the night. I laughed so hard I was in tears. The next day, seeing it in the daylight, the color was actually more of a peach than a neon and looked nice, but for whatever reason it was glow in the dark orange at night. Some might even call it a carnival orange. It surprised no one that Karen turned her home into a rental and moved somewhere else. And yeah, ripe stars, that is what entitled stupid racist neighbors deserve. Although I gotta admit, I really like neon colors too. But maybe I'm just weird. I gotta say, I'm not good with colors anyway. In my native language, you would say I am color weak, so basically for me it is very hard to differentiate green, red and brownish colors. So maybe that's why my thumbnails sometimes look weird color-wise. Who knows? Anyway, the next one is titled Stupid Entitled Mom in Parking Lot. I was fresh out of a doctor's appointment and on my way back to work, only enough time to stop by a local grocery store to get a few things because it was gonna be a late work night at the office. When I finished my visit at the store, I'm on my way out to my car and get stopped by a woman. Choosing beggar, "Excuse me, can you help me? I have no money and I'm living in my car with my kids and we are hungry. We just escaped a bad situation." Me, "I'm glad you got out. I'm thinking and surprised to be approached randomly, so yeah, I can get you something real quick." I look at the Subway knowing it will be quick and filling. Let's go in Subway. CB, actually, can we get something from the Mexican cantina? I don't like the bread from Subway." Me, well, I'm in a rush, very unsure how to respond and is trying to think, gets interrupted. CB, "Oh, that's okay. If you have any loose money, I swear I'll go in and get the food for my kids and I." Me, "I unfortunately don't have loose money and only my card, but if we can go in Subway, they have more." Then gets interrupted again. CB, "It's the bread. It just..." I can't. I swear they're fast putting together food at the cantina. Me, "I really can't and I don't have time. Think how else I can quickly help her and her kids. What about the deli section in the store? I need to be back at work. I'm so sorry." CB, "Really, the cantina is fast. Maybe you can pull out money at the ATM. Me, "I'm sorry. I am late back to work and I don't have time for the cantina." I then proceeded to walk away and all I could think was, how could you be hungry and choosy, especially when you have kids? Update, I offered things as well from the grocery store deli section and she said no on the cantina and then yes. She did have kids with her, I saw them. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm curious if you have ever encountered this in real life, when you helped someone out who was on the street and they then turned into choosing beggars. And I gotta say, I usually frequently do this because I really hate seeing people out in the street. However, there are not even that many people out here in the street in northern Thailand, so this mainly happened in Bangkok. And so usually you give these people money, but they are pretty much never satisfied with what they get. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.